Well, first, I'd like to thank you all for having me today. I'm thrilled to be here. A little bit about myself. My name is Christine Brooks. I work at Bridges by Epic in Sudbury. Grew up in Stowe, raised my kids in Stowe. I have been working in senior living now for 24 years. I am a certified dementia practitioner. I am also a certified Alzheimer's and dementia care trainer, so I train others as well. Today, Jane asked me to come and talk about the benefits of early detection. And the reason that is so important. So many people don't realize how important early detection is. A lot of people don't even want to go to the doctor these days when they have memory issues, cognitive issues, but you're ready to go right away if you feel like you might have some heart problems or respiratory problems. There's a stigma to it, and it's really sad that we do have that stigma attached to any type of cognitive problems. So I'm going to get started. Stop me anytime if you have any questions. And I also gave you each a bag with some information in it for some upcoming events that we're having, education programs. There's support group information in there. And on February 4th, we have a panel for people, an informative panel. There'll be an elder law attorney. I'll be there, Adult Day Health, and clear guidance talking about expressive therapy. So early detection, it comes with many benefits, not just for the person who's afflicted with a cognitive impairment, but for the caregivers as well. After a diagnosis, the individuals and the families receive valuable information from the physician. They can get support, they can get resources on where to go, and how to navigate the disease going forward. And what I tell people is dementia, cognitive impairment, Alzheimer's, that doesn't just affect the individual. It affects the entire family. Everybody is involved because the family has to now take on a new role. So when you're looking for a diagnosis, the CDC said nearly 90% of Americans said that if they were exhibiting any type of confusion or memory loss, they would want to know the cause of the symptoms and if it was Alzheimer's disease or is it something else. Yet half of those over 45 with subjective cognitive decline have not spoken with a healthcare provider about their questions, their concerns, or their fears. And among those whose memory problems were creating functioning disabilities, 42% haven't shared this with a provider. So when you're going to your physician and you're talking about your overall well-being, many folks don't share these concerns that they have with their provider, whether it's fear, shame, but then the provider can't help you navigate because it's not always a dementia or Alzheimer's. So seeking a dementia diagnosis, it's an emotional decision, one that may come with fear of judgment, worries about the future, how your loved ones are going to react to that, how your friends are going to react to that. And while these feelings are valid, the benefits of early detection can help eliminate some of the stigma around dementia. The diagnosis allows the family to take control of the situation. Talk with the person who's afflicted with dementia. How do you want to navigate forward? How it gives that person a sense of control, too, of their own life and how they are going to move forward. There are a range of medical, emotional, social, and future planning benefits that come with the diagnosis. It is profoundly life-altering. It impacts your job if you're still working, your family life, your relationships, not just within the family, but your relationships with your friends, your coworkers. So it's not surprising that reactions to a diagnosis, it varies from person to person, and it varies greatly. Some people experience shock, anger, sadness, frustration, despair. And for some, however, the diagnosis provides a sense of relief in the form that now they have answers, what is happening and why my memory is deteriorating. Communication issues have been a problem. Behavioral changes, now I have an answer as to what's going on. The response depends on how a person with dementia is told about it and the support resources available to them following a diagnosis. So if the person is working with a physician that knows where to send the person, give them the resources, be supportive themselves rather than just giving a diagnosis and saying, well, now we know. You need somebody who's going to be able to help you navigate next steps in what you want to do. So this is a quote from a very young man at age of 50 who was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. Being diagnosed with something like this absolutely devastates you. But for me, diagnosis, and this is going to sound very strange, was probably the best news I had at the time because I thought I was losing my mind. I thought there was a conspiracy against me, that I was right and everybody else was wrong. An early diagnosis of dementia is so, so important. Once diagnosed, I knew that what I was up against. And as they say, know your enemy. If I hadn't been diagnosed early and I hadn't been able to be seen by the consultants on a regular basis, I wouldn't be as well as I am today. I don't know what my future holds, but at least I'm prepared for it. And that's such a great attitude for somebody to have with a devastating diagnosis. So, practical benefits of learning about early detection. So, families can gain access to the information, resources, support that allows them to learn what to expect as the disease progresses. And I can tell you from doing this for such a long time, everybody is very different. And you see one person with dementia or Alzheimer's, you see one person. Everybody presents in a different way, and people need to be supported in different ways as well. It helps the person with memory loss have more control over their situation, and they can plan for common changes that they know are going to occur down the road and be part of the plan. Evidence suggests that early diagnosis could help individuals live independently longer. Understanding the situation, it allows for preparedness to avoid accidents or hospitalizations resulting from symptoms of dementia. There are many symptoms that go along with this disease, many of which are physical, because it is a disease within your brain, and the brain is actually getting smaller as time goes on, and that's why you lose some of those abilities. It allows family caregivers to better recognize and manage the symptoms. Some family members feel a lot of guilt following a diagnosis. That is not uncommon at all, because they become very short-tempered and irritated with their loved one, not realizing that these behaviors are actually a result of the disease. That's a symptom. When people, oftentimes your personality will change. Somebody who was once very loving and caring, now because of the frustration they feel, because they're forgetting, they may lash out. Diagnosis may potentially help caregivers be more patient and understanding through gaining a deeper knowledge about the dementia and the symptoms. I'm just going to take a sip of water. I can feel my face up getting dry. Education is so important once you or someone you know gets the diagnosis of any kind. The medical benefits. A confirmed diagnosis eliminates the possibility of other potentially reversible or treatable conditions that cause a person's memory, communication, or behavioral problems. Certain medical conditions can cause similar symptoms, including depression, urinary tract infections, and thyroid problems. Those can all have side effects that are going to affect your memory, and those are perfectly treatable. So it's good to go see the doctor, tell them the symptoms that you're having. Drugs also, or different drug combinations, they can also cause some dementia-like symptoms. Diagnosis offers the chance to make healthy lifestyle changes, such as controlling your blood pressure, stopping smoking, very important, exercising, staying mentally and socially active. It is proven that socialization and using your brain, just by having conversation with people, is going to help folks that have a cognitive impairment. It allows individuals and their families to put a care team in place and discuss the proper treatments and the course of actions with your physicians as well. Better manage your medications, receive counseling, and address the challenges that might go along with it, other chronic challenges that develop along the way. So diagnosis also allows for a chance of benefiting from treatment options, which tend to be more effective in the very early stages. Current medications do not prevent or stop Alzheimer's disease and cannot reverse it, but you can lessen the symptoms and you can slow it down with certain drugs. Early diagnosis also makes people eligible for a wide range of clinical trials, and there are more and more clinical trials going on now than ever before. Some require the individual to agree to participate and demonstrate that they understand the treatment. So if you're earlier on and you're able to, make those decisions on your own, you're more likely to be able to get into a clinical trial and more likely to benefit from the clinical trial earlier in the disease process. The emotional benefits, number one, it provides an answer, the answer as to why things are happening. And it can help lessen the anxiety for the individual as to why you're experiencing certain symptoms. It gives the person with the memory loss control over their future. You can talk about how you want things to happen going forward. When you can no longer make those decisions for yourself, you can put a plan in place now. And it gives families the ability to seek out resources and support programs to provide education and encouragement, both for the person with dementia and for the caregiver. Caregivers need just as much support as the person who's afflicted with the disease. There's so much guilt on both sides. The person who's afflicted doesn't want to become a burden to their family, to their caregivers. The caregivers feel a tremendous amount of guilt if they're not able to be there and care for this person all of the time and meet all of their needs. The diagnosis allows families to be intentional about making the most of the time they have left and developing a plan. It gives families the opportunity to refocus on the present and not save things for the future. Don't put things off. Go on a vacation. Go visit friends. Have a good time and enjoy it. Families may wish to record meaningful memories of the person with dementia through writing, photos, videos, so that as the disease progresses, that person can look back on it and have an understanding of who's visiting them and what's happening. Oftentimes when the disease progresses further, it doesn't matter, but they have a feeling. They don't remember the name. They may not remember the person, but they know that person gives them a feeling of joy, of safety. This person who's coming to visit me, I may not remember my son's name anymore, but I know I'm very happy whenever he comes. Early diagnosis gives someone the chance to explain to family and friends on their own terms the changes that are happening in their life, and tell people up front what is going on and why you may be doing things that are a little out of the ordinary for you, or maybe you do things that are a little unusual, so that your friends understand what you're going through. It gives the individual the opportunity to pursue their lifelong dreams or work on a bucket list before things become too severe. Again, take that vacation. Do things that you always wanted to do. The benefits also for future planning. It allows the person to discuss their wishes for the late stage of the disease. As you go through, there are 3 major phases. There is early, mid, and late. Late stage is when somebody can really no longer express their needs or their desires. But if you do that because you had these conversations with your family and your caregivers early on, they're going to know what you would want when you can no longer say that yourself. It allows time for the person to be part of the legal and financial end-of-life decisions. Make sure that you have designated a power of attorney, healthcare proxy, and that you discuss all of this with those people that you've designated. Talk about treatment options. What type of treatment are you willing to do? How far are you willing to go? It allows for planning related to safety and security, including living arrangements, driving, cooking, managing medications. Living arrangements, so many people say, I'm never leaving my home, I'm staying in this place, but the person lives alone. Is it going to be safe? When do we take away the keys? That's another discussion, because eventually that has to happen. Cooking becomes a problem. Leaving the stove on. And it's not just leaving the stove on, it's eating food that's gone bad. Managing medications is a big one. People have done it both ways. Forgetting to take their medications altogether and over-medicating because you've taken your medications in the morning. An hour later, you forgot you took your medications and, I got to take those meds. And people have overdosed on their medications because of memory impairment. Ultimately, it reduces a weight on families, and it helps prevent potential disagreements between family members, the adult children particularly. If you have a family with even 2 to 4 children, and they each want something different for mom or dad, but you've laid out your desires ahead of time, there will be no infighting amongst the children. And that is something we see all the time when people have not had those tough conversations early on. You have one child that really wants to do things one way, and you have another child that says, no, mom would never want that. We're going to do it a different way. And there's a lot of disagreements, and it's really tough, and it's tough on both family members. So the importance of screening. Remember that the loss of memory does not automatically indicate Alzheimer's disease or another form of dementia. Getting screened allows you to find out if your challenges are truly related to dementia, and then you can effectively plan for your future. So another quote, but if you had a pain in your back or in your chest, or a throb in your legs or feet, you didn't know what it was, you would go to a doctor. Yet with dementia, people seem to shy away from it. But knowing what's wrong with you is so important. You can't hide from it. And that goes back to the stigma again, and fear. People are afraid. So signs that it might be time for a screening. If your memory is disrupting your everyday life, it might be time for screening. If it's, oh, I forget where I put my car keys, but you can backtrack in your mind and retrace your steps, that's probably not a problem. But if you cannot retrace your steps and you don't know how to do that, it could be an issue. Challenges in planning, solving problems. If your executive function is a problem and you are now thinking through a problem, but you can't get from the beginning to the end, it might be time. Difficulty that you're having completing familiar tasks, financial, balancing your checkbook, paying the bills, trouble with vision or spatial orientation. People don't realize that dementia often causes changes with your vision as well, because it's affecting that part of the brain. And spatial issues, you can't tell. If you're in a room and you have a floor or a rug with a lot of patterns in it, oftentimes people will think they have to step over something or over a threshold because it looks like a black hole, or there's something I can't get from this side to that side because there's something in the way, and you automatically want to step over it, and that's because your vision is being affected. Problems with communication, and when I say that, word finding. If you're having a problem with word finding and it's happening more and more often, that could be a sign. If you're having trouble with the telephone and you want to call your neighbors, your friends, your family, but you're having a difficult time with the numbers, that could be an issue. Decreased or poor judgment and a change in mood or personality. And oftentimes it's a friend or a family member that notices that first. A friend or a family member will notice if your personality has suddenly changed from somebody who was normally upbeat, willing to take risks, loved conversation even, and now wants to stay home a little more. Not so happy, not the life of the party. Conversations, doesn't participate anymore because they can't keep up with the conversation, and friends and family will notice that. I'll give you an example of how this happened in my own family with my father-in-law. He was diagnosed, 10 years before it had turned into something, but this man was extremely active in the community. He was active with family and friends. If there was anything going on, he was the first one there. He had to always give his input because that's who he was, in a good way. And then all of a sudden, he stopped giving his input. He stopped giving advice. He just would sit back and kind of do this. And if somebody asked him a question, I'm sorry, I didn't hear, I wasn't paying attention. He couldn't keep up with what everybody was saying, and he didn't want them to know that he could pick up an hearing loss itself. Mm-hmm. Yes. And that would be something to have checked. Again, a reason to go to the doctor, because it could be hearing loss and it has nothing to do with your memory or cognition. So after a diagnosis, that's the first step in understanding and effectively managing your journey. It is a journey from beginning to end. Schedule a follow-up with the physician and ask as many questions as you need. Ask where to find the resources, where to find a support group. An elder law attorney. Maybe you haven't made provisions yet. Maybe you don't have a healthcare proxy. Maybe you haven't designated a power of attorney or an alternate. These are things that are going to be very important when you can't make your own decisions. Seek the support of a trusted family member or friend, someone that you can talk to about your feelings on a regular basis. A lot of people are afraid to seek out their friends and talk about it. For whatever reason, it's embarrassing, but it shouldn't be. And if you need a support group, find a support group. But you need someone that you can go to and talk to about your fears, about the things that are changing. And remember, life does not stop because you have a diagnosis of dementia. Some people can live for years and years without any progression. It doesn't mean that something is going to happen right away. So planning for your care. You want to build a team that's going to help you and your family throughout the journey, throughout the whole way. So care teams usually consist of healthcare professionals. You want doctors, nurses, specialists, therapists are very important. Community members and organizations, social workers, church organizations, the Bridges team. We have support groups in person. We have them via Zoom. We have an early stage support group. We have one that's open to everybody. We do education. Family and friends who are closest to you and understand you. Consider ways each of these groups can help you now and in the future. You want to keep your team informed of what's going on also. So your support group, who may consist of friends and family, you want them to know what the doctor has said. You want them to know what's happening now so they can help you best. So transitioning to memory care, there's no right answer to that. When it comes to a decision about care moving forward or whether to keep someone in the home or move them, it really depends on the family and the dynamics and whether or not there really is somebody to help care for the person in the home. That's the other thing. So many people now, we have, both of the adult children are working and can't be home. The spouse may have their own health issues and not be available all the time to help the person. So as memory impairment progresses, care needs often increase beyond what family members can safely provide. People wander. People who you would never think would go outside in the winter without a coat will all of a sudden just walk out the door, think they're going for a walk, but not know their way back home, not have a coat on. And that happens all the time. People will say, Mary would never do that. She would never walk outside till it does, until it happens. People become incontinent, both bowel and bladder. Families aren't always equipped to handle that and to care for somebody with that. People often bring caregivers into the home care agencies, and those are very helpful, very helpful. The issue arises when the caregiver calls out sick and can't make it, or their child's home, sick for school and they can't make it. But the important thing is to do what your family, talk to family ahead of time, everybody work together and have a plan in place. So if you do have the means to stay at home and somebody's able to care for you, that's great. So it's different for every person. There's no right or wrong. And moving to any type of community, whether it's memory care or not, it's a very difficult and emotional decision. People feel a lot of guilt when they need to do that. But the benefits of moving into a community setting are so beneficial. I mean, it's just amazing. The socialization, for number one. You're there with other people like you with the same issues. There's physical exercise several times a day. Like I said, the socialization, even eating meals with other people, having conversation. That alone helps the brain to continue. 24-hour support. You know, it's delivered around the clock by a team that is trained to deal with that. Customized wellness. Bridges teams learn about each resident, their life story, their hobbies, their likes. And we have to do that in order to build trust. Because in order to care for somebody, you have to gain their trust. We have life enrichment teams that create unique opportunities for residents at every level, because you have people in the early stages, you have people in the mid stages, and you have people at the end, and they're going to need very different types of activities. Our folks go out to restaurants, they go have coffee at Dunkin' Donuts, you know, they have a good time. And the biggest help allows families can let go of the caregiving demands and refocus their time on relationships. The adult daughter can continue to be the adult daughter and go have your nails done together, have a meal together. The spouse can be the spouse again and just enjoy each other's company and not be worrying about the next thing he or she has to do for this person and for themselves. Any questions about any? Yes.
I've been a nurse for 40 years and know there's a shortage of caregivers at every level, everywhere in the country, and that's only going to get worse. I'm just wondering, you know, what thoughts you have or other people have about that. And also the financial force. I mean, lots of people can afford, but lots of people can't. And yeah, I'm just curious about what kind.
We're all working to help people, especially people who can't afford it right now. I mean, there are several bills at the State House and the Alzheimer's Association working on things as well, because you're right, this is a very expensive disease. Moving into a community, it is costly, absolutely. But right now, there are a few government programs in place, but not nearly enough, especially for the numbers that we're seeing. As for the caregivers, it has gotten better since COVID. We're not anywhere near where we need to be, but I do know that there are more people going into it. The schools also, the local schools have the CNA programs, the vocational schools. We had a program within our own community where we put people through and became home health aides. It's just finding people that want to do this type of work. That's the issue.
Will get paid, Corey.
Yes, and that I'm actually pleased to say that the caregivers' wages we have raised the beginning wages tremendously from where they were 3 and 4 years ago. You know, it had to happen because we need to keep those caregivers.
Do you know if Medicare pays for any memory care either in the hospital or at a facility? Or
Yeah.
Not in a community. Medicare does not. No. Your benefits, it depends on what you have for insurance. If you're on one of those HMOs, whether or not they may pay for some in the home, but it wouldn't be much.
okay.
Yeah. Long-term care insurance, if anybody has that, and I do see a lot of that will pay for a caregiver in the home and in a community. Yes,
Couple of questions. So is it possible to get a copy of this?
I do have copies for you.
Real
Good.
Zach, you said that the medications won't stop or if
It won't prevent it and it won't reverse it. But
are there things that, so in terms of social activity, are there things that will mitigate your progress of not reverse it, but will stop?
keeping your brain active and healthy, coming to the senior center and participating in programs is very helpful. Exercise is very helpful. Sitting at home alone and isolating for people, that is not going to help slow down the progress. It'll speed up because you're not using your brain.
Because Bridges in Sudbury, do they have what I call outpatient things as well as people who are inpatients in the community? Do they?
The only things we do externally are education programs. We also have support groups for people who live out of our community. All of our education and support groups are for the general public, anybody. And whether you're never going to move into a Bridges or not, you're welcome. Everybody is welcome.
Are those covered by insurance?
Those are free. I've got those in your packet there in your bag. And those are free. All the education is free. Yeah.
So do you have like adult daycare?
We do not, but there are several adult daycares in the area. There's one right nearby that we work with very closely, Better Day Adult Health. Elderwell is another one. That's in Natick. But I know there's
CES and
Cooperative Elder Services in Acton. So there are several around Stowe. And that's a great option, especially mid-stage, where, you know, especially it gives the caregiver a break, whether it's 1 day a week, 2 days, or all week long. That's a very viable option, especially if you can't afford a memory care community.
What's the lowest price of entry currently?
You know what? I don't know, in Massachusetts.
No, for your facility.
Oh, for ours,
Just a ballpark.
ballpark would be 12.
Okay.
And it's all inclusive though. We don't, it's not like you pay separately for increased levels of care. A lot of places you do have to look to see, is that really the base? Or are we talking, okay, so now mom needs help with incontinence and she may need redirection. So does that mean that's an added cost? Some places say, oh, that includes an hour of care a day. Well, how do you figure out an hour? Are you saying, because you have to help the person with dementia all day long. They need redirection. They need guidance. We're guidance driven to help people stay as independent as they can, but guide them to make the right decisions. You're welcome.
I just something that is so kind of maybe I was visiting nurse for 20 years, pediatrics, but the stipulation for older people is that they have to be homebound, have home care. But that contradicts what you're saying about trying to get people outside for socialization or any kind of activities. So,
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully that's something that can be addressed later.
It would have to be,
Yeah.
because I think they're looking at the homebound person that is later in the disease.
Yeah, if they're looking at homebound people who are homebound for all kinds of reasons,
Right.
not Alzheimer's.
Well, that's true. I mean, yeah, you're right.
And they have to be homebound, so they're going to get Alzheimer's because they can't go in.
Yeah, but even in our community, they're considered homebound. Like they can't get in a car and drive themselves to outpatient physical therapy.
Right.
You know, if somebody doesn't have that ability to drive themselves, or they don't have someone to bring them, that's homebound. You know, doesn't mean they are bedbound,
Right.
but they're homebound because they can't get themselves where they need to be and they don't have someone to take them. Yes.
For research for people very early on stages, and it's covered by Medicare. It's really, is it McLean Hospital? They have a geriatric cognitive program, and they research something called SAGE.
Yep.
So please drop us. You know that's something that's
We work very closely with McLean Hospital, and we have a lot of education programs through McLean's as well. And I can certainly send you that information if that's something you're interested in.
Can search your computer. You on the computer find program for languages, study languages, different languages, what kind of you want. Puzzles, do it, and play games, chess, chat, and card, different games for brain. It's good for brain. If you practicing or sewing, hear a lot of stuff who sew and do quilting and everything, do it with hands. You can come here, it's a lot of places, one playing card, chess,
Right.
and do different stuff with hands. It's for brain good. And exercise here in this room is very good. And speak this what everybody, it's very friendly people. It's very good too. It's
That's very important
Yeah.
to keep up with that. Puzzles, crosswords, Sudoku, all of that keeps your brain active, and it is important.
I just thought of something else too, and this is related to my mother's 92 and lives by herself in New Orleans. But anyway, some of the things, the technology that has been developed that can really help is beyond older people's ability to. Even trying to learn new technology on the computer and stuff like that. So we, when we had left my mother alone, we got her an Uber app. And we're charged it, but she never used it because she was afraid. She just didn't trust that.
You have to put on your switch on, and then she said, enough, you turn off, and that's all. She can program, look for geography, history.
She's 92 years old. She lives in New Orleans by herself. All her children live all over the country. She can't do it.
And we find that a lot with folks that don't have any cognitive impairment.
Right.
Because this is foreign to them. And they didn't grow up with it. I mean, even me, when my grandchildren are showing me things, I'm like, wow, now I'm feeling
Just little children models on computer than we are.
Yeah. I mean, technology is evolving constantly. And at some point, it's scary for somebody older in their 90s. I mean, they figure I've gotten by without it this long, and it is scary. Yeah.
Switch on good movie. She will enjoy sitting 1.5 hours, enjoy this movie.
Any other questions?
Are children can have dementia or not?
We have not seen any studies or anything that have shown children with
But
dementia.
children can have.
I have seen people as young as in their 30s develop dementia. I have personally cared for a young man in his 40s where his wife could no longer care for him. And now we see coming into our community more and more people in their late 60s, early 70s.
The youngest who was.
I don't know the youngest. I just know the youngest that I've personally seen was in his 40s.
Yeah, I didn't see children with dementia too.
No, but children play a key role as well.
Are you asking if there's a genetic predisposition?
No, sometimes they sickness, no, not dementia. I didn't see, when I work in school, I didn't see children with dementia.
But I meant tracing history here. That people, elders, go back and see whether those people have a higher occurrence in
Yes.
their young.
If there is, you have a higher likelihood of getting some sort of a dementia if it is in your family. Absolutely.
If from family can
Yes.
bring, no, not for young children, only for
Older.
older.
Have your experience with the 40-year-old, for that person, was it familial? Did they have a direct relationship?
No, his was actually head trauma
Okay.
that caught frontal temporal dementia. He had a bad fall, but it was years later, after the fall, that he was diagnosed.
Right. And there were all kinds of conditions, whether they're genetic
Exactly.
or whether they're environmental, that children are born with or develop. And so there are children who are like people with dementia in that they have they been all their lives, or they can develop it. There's so many different kinds of neurologic diseases that people can get at any age. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, according to Google, 19 years old is the youngest.
The youngest.
It was in Beijing, China.
Wow. And see, I learn something new every time I do these
Doesn't
presentations.
say head trauma, just that,
But I thought too that
Yeah,
Alzheimer's
it has
is
the
typically
markers
not being
and-
diagnosed after death by a brain biopsy. Is
And
that still true?
yeah, I mean, that's the definitive, but you also can do MRIs and present with certain symptoms that lead folks to know what it is, because there's so many different types of dementia. Alzheimer's is only one under a huge umbrella of different diagnoses. So, and each one presents a little differently also.
Some come from COVID, somebody fall down on the
Yes.
somebody genetics and so on.
Given the importance of social activity, there is probably some studies where the only children have a disproportionately higher percentage of
I don't know if that study's been done, but not necessarily, because only children, yes, they're an only child, for the first 18 years, but they usually surround themselves with a huge group of people and friends, and doesn't mean that they are alone all the time. And your brain's still developing at that point. You have all your friends at school while you're growing up. So you've kind of got an extended family.
Sure.
Yeah, in the school and class they come home and study, do homework, then they play on the computer or phone.
Well, there's a lot less socialization nowadays with them on the computer and the games, that's for sure.
I'm glad there were computer games so and that there were calculators coming, because I wanted to do all these things and we have.
Right.
It's recently seen in the impact of the COVID, which what's been doing the last children that were in school.
Yeah, it's gonna show up.
And there are, the most interesting clinical trial that I've heard about in the past couple of years, there's a neurologist in West Virginia who's using pinpoint ultrasound to, I don't know if it's a blade or something like that, areas in the brain that are affected by Alzheimer's. They can visually see the plaques or the
Yes.
and they also use that therapy to treat addiction and tremor.
Tremors.
Yeah, there was a show on 60 Minutes. I've seen it twice now where they put people in an MRI scanner and they have to immobilize their head so much that they almost put them in like that halo traction you see, and then they're conscious. And they will not, I don't know for sure, but they go in there and they direct this high intensity ultrasound on these areas. And they showed this man whose tremor resolved during the treatment. It was seizure.
Wow.
And they also showed before and after pictures of scans of people with Alzheimer's and how the amount of the plaque that was able to be visualized was much less after these treatments.
So there's something therapeutic. There's a promising thing that's actually
Yes.
therapeutic.
Yes, I haven't. It's in West, so I'm sure it's a clinical trial, but I'm sure it's very exclusive, actually, because now
There's so much work to be done.
Yeah.
There's just so much more to be done when it comes to this disease. But I am glad to see that it is more in the forefront these days. The stigma is starting to go away. People, because of the education, I think we are finding the diagnosis sooner so that people can make these decisions that they need to make and prepare. And that's really important.
Goodness gracious.
And I'm happy if there's any subjects that you would like to know about. My card is in there if you want to shoot me an email. We do education series on several different topics, including how to communicate with the person that has dementia, how it affects the children, how to deal with behaviors.
Anybody else? This content?
The bags are for you to have. We have.
I would like to have those.
Yeah, she can make. I'll ask Jane to make you some copies because we ended up having more folks than I expected, and I apologize for that.
Okay, I asked only.
And I do have the handouts from today's as well.
Great.
So you can have that. Inside there, there's upcoming events that we're having, educational series.
she can have this one, soon I would.
Oh, thank you so much.